Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Hey Rob, how about we introduce this bloke by just throwing some stats up? I'll tell the stats, you tell us who he is. How's that sound?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, this bloke he played 224 games for Essendon and kicked 306 goals. Two of those games in the 224 were the 1962 and 1965 grand finals that Essendon won. He wore the number 31 jumper from 1953 to 1967, except in 1965, where for some reason we'll find out, hopefully, he wore number 30. He was the 660th player to play for Essendon. He sits at number 20 in their games played list, so that's pretty handy. Best and fairest 1959. I just was third in the Brownlow that year behind a few blokes who could play a bit. Bob Skilton, Verdon Howell, and was equal with Ray Gabelik, Bill Sarong and Teddy Whitten. Represented Victoria 4 times, played and coached at Dandenong, coached Carlton's reserves, and did a bit of TV and radio as well. Who we got on the line?
We have got a gentleman who is very famous within his club, probably a lot more famous than he is in the VFL, AFL world, and that's a bit of a shame, but I'm sure he likes the anonymity
being not recognised.
And we welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show Essendon champion Hugh Mitchell. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Rob. How are you going, all right?
Good. How does all that feel when it's read back to you about what you've actually done in the footy, albeit a long time ago, but you've still done it?
Yeah, well, it's been a big part of my life, and when I was a youngster, I loved footy, and the important thing that I barracked for the Bombers, and I was very fortunate to reach that level. And now, look, when I look back on my career, I was very, very happy that I achieved something. And the important thing was, when you play with a footy club, you want to be the best team, and I was fortunate to get 2 premierships with the Bombers. But when I look back on my career, I was probably a little bit lucky. I had a lot of injuries, broken collarbone, broken leg, and a few other things. I overcame that problem, and I was fortunate that I continued my career. And if I hadn't got over those injuries, I probably wouldn't have played in their 62 and 65 premiership.
We must thank one of your very dear friends and good teammates, John Burt, firstly, friend of the show, himself played in those 2 premierships with you, and also one of your teammates, Gary Fenton, good friend of mine, who helped make this work. They're both listening this morning, so good morning to you both. That era, you talked about a great team, and there's been other periods of time in the club's history where Kevin Sheedy coached, and you had that little block of premierships in the 80s, and then one premiership around 2000. Many thought you should have won more, but that Essendon side that you played in, it was so good for a long period of time. Do you think 2 premierships was enough, or do you reckon you underachieved a little?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. When you look back and the years of 62 and 65, we did have a good side there, but the following year, 63, we were in the 4 for most of the year, and we just got pipped at the last game on percentage. We dropped out of the 4. 64, we made the first semi-final. We got beaten by Geelong, and of course we came back in 65. But look, football's a very unpredictable game, Rob, because you never know what's going to happen, and you only hope that things turn out, in your way. But it was one of that era where we had a good bunch of players. You mentioned Johnny Burt. He was a great little rover. We had players like Kenny Fraser, a great centre half forward. We had
Jack Clark went all right.
Sorry?
Jack Clark went all right.
Oh, well, I was going to mention Jack, and it was a pleasure to play with Jack. He was a great player, great captain, and then across the half-back line you had Alec Epps, Bluey Shelton and Barry Davis, all quality players. And
pretty handy fullback, Greg Brown, Donnie McKenzie, great ruckman, just a wonderful team when you look back at it. Yeah, well,
Macca was a terrific player. He was a tough man and a very good team player, and he served the club very, very well in that ruck division. And we had a lot of had a lot of good players. Russell Blue was a good player on the wing, but the names just keep going on. But maybe we could have won another flag in the 60s, but we're very happy to get the 62 and 65 flags. So,
Hughie, your role in the team as a ruck rover probably built on the incredible success in that role of Ron Barassi. You would have been pitted against him in many games through that period of time. Did you mould your game on him from watching him, or was it something that Essendon coaches just assisted you in creating that ruck rover role that you played so well?
Yeah, well, when I first started playing with Essendon, I played a lot of football across the half-forward line, and in my junior days I played on the ball, and I was given the opportunity in 1957 to play on the ball, and I grabbed that because I really enjoyed it. But look, Barras and I had some good tussles. We had a lot of respect for each other, and I just played the game that I wanted to play, and the only time that I sort of caught up with him was when we were defending. But I used to love running around the ground, open spaces, and people would say, gee, how did you get her on your own? How did you... Rob, there's a thing called reading the play. It's an art, and I was fortunate that I had that because I knew where the second or third kick was coming, and the important thing too, I had good players around me, so that was important.
So Hugh, it's Neil Butler here. I am the other bloke. Great to have you on board. This is all a little bit before my time. We always make a bit of fun of Rob and his age, but it is a little bit before my time. You would have been coming off the back end of an extraordinarily dominant period by Melbourne. Was there a time where you saw, the Essendon side that actually won the flags in 62 and 65 kind of catching up and going past Melbourne?
Yeah, well, when I look back on those in the 50s, Neil, the Melbourne were a very, very good, talented side. Of course, they had one of the greatest coaches of all time in Norm Smith. We got runners-up in 57 and 59. We had a good team then, and of course, Dick Reynolds was coach. And, there was one, I think it was a 59 grand final. I think there was only a kick the difference up to three-quarter time. But Melbourne just ran away because they were a good, very good, talented team, and we just weren't good enough on the day. But Melbourne, I think, were the strength in the 50s, and every time we played them, they were very, very hard to beat.
Hugh, I want to talk to you about some of those names you've popped up. John Burt was in this very studio with us when I first met him, talking about arriving at Essendon. He'd been recruited by Dick Reynolds. Billy Hutchison was in the room with him, then later coached by Coleman. The three greatest names in the club's history. For a young fellow like you would have come in the team. Billy was playing. Dick Reynolds was probably your first coach, if memory's right, and then you may have even seen you would have played a bit with Coleman as well. What was it like, a young fellow like yourself, coming into a club with these incredible icons of the game?
Yeah, well, it's, when you look back when you were a kid and you love the game, I used to go up and watch every game. I had a junior membership ticket for about 5 years, saw every game, saw 3 premierships in that period. But you probably wished and hoped for, like every young kid's dream, to play with a club that you loved and you followed. I was given that opportunity, particularly, with Dick Reynolds, even Billy Hutchison, 2 of the greatest players that ever played the game. And even John Coleman. I played 8 games with Coleman. I never believed that I was on the same ground as him. When I played my first game, I was centre half forward, and John was full forward. And of course, later on, he became a coach and coached our 62 and 65 premiership, of course. But look, when you mention those names, to be involved, I can always remember the time when I started in the thirds. I only played 5 games, and the secretary called me into his office and he said, "Son, you're on the supplementary list." And I said, "What's that?" I didn't know what it was, which is now the rookie list. And he said, "Oh, you don't train with the thirds anymore, you train with the seniors." And I said, "Oh, what, with Billy Hutchison, Reynolds and Coleman and these guys?" He said, "Yeah." So you played with the reserves, and then, of course, later that year I was lucky enough to get 2 games at the end of the season, including it was against Melbourne at the MCG, and that was one of the games I played with Coleman.
Because I've obviously done my research here, Hugh. Playing for the Mooney Imperials, I believe, was your junior side. I'm guessing, like most people who ended up at Essendon, you went to Essendon High School. Tell us a bit about the fact that, these days kids get plucked out of their private schools, sent off to Brisbane or Perth or wherever they are, nowhere near the team that they barracked for. You've got this childhood dream. You've come out of high school and you're playing footy. What sort of work were you doing during the day? What did a typical week look like?
Well, I mean, in those days, of course, a bit different today with the money involved with players. If we didn't work, we didn't survive. But, when you look back in your school days, I can always remember that we started a school football team, and the sports master said to me, he said, Hugh, what number would you like? I said, well, I've got to have number 3. It was to Dick Reynolds. Because I looked up to Dick like a lot of people because he was such a great player. But, the one thing you mentioned too, there was when you were a kid and you followed a team and you loved your footy every week, I was very lucky to play with a team that I loved when I was a kid, which doesn't happen today because of the draft. They could finish up all over the country. So I was very fortunate that did happen and I was given that opportunity. But the club used to send down a football every winter, and at the side of it was branded with compliments of the Essendon Footy Club. And we used to kick that at lunchtime, and we thought that was like a piece of gold. We'd hit each other, jump on each other just to get a kick of the footy because it came from the football club. So that's how much the club meant to me when I was a youngster.
So let's take a season like 1959 was obviously a really good season for you. You won the best and fairest. You came third in the Brownlow. So you played at 2:10 on a Saturday afternoon. What did the rest of the week look like? Presumably there were training sessions, but you had to go and work. What sort of work were you doing, and how did the training fit in with all that?
Oh, well, I was working in Flinders Lane, and in those days we never had a car because we had to use public transport. Well, I did anyway, and I had 7 minutes to catch a train from Flinders Lane to Flinders Street Station. Then I'd run from the Essendon station up to the ground. And then in most cases, particularly midwinter, I'd train under one light, would you believe? There was about 6 of us. We did our own training. But no, we worked, and we only trained Tuesday, Thursdays, turn up Saturday, enjoyed the footy. And, look, it's one of those things that's all different now, that's completely turned a new leaf. But when I look back on those days, they were good days, and we thoroughly enjoyed it because you made a lot of sacrifices because you just loved your footy and, more importantly, you loved playing with the club.
We loved our VFA footy. I was just saying to you off air that Geelong completely changed when Billy Goggin went to coach Geelong West. Premiers the first year, Premiers and Champions the first year in Division 2, then up into Division 1. And Sunday television every week, it was mandatory. The Western Oval would have 10,000 people there every week watching the Roosters go around. You were at Dandenong, one of the great clubs of the VFA, coach there. What was that different footy world for you then?
Yeah, it was. When I was 15, Mum and Dad moved up to Dandenong. Dad had to get up there to get some work. I started playing in the Dandenong district under 18s. I was 15 years of age, and I was only up there for a couple of years, and then came down to Mooney Imps in 51 and 52. And at the time, there were a lot of players coming out of the Essendon District League in those days, and they had a lot of guys coming down, recruiting guys, watching you, and I was fortunate to get invited to go up there and start with the thirds. But when I went to Dandy, after I finished up my footy career with Essendon, that's the reason I went back there, because I started there and only played 1 year when I was 15 years of age. And then I was fortunate that my first year in 67, we won a premiership against Port Melbourne. 68, I was fortunate also to win the best and fairest. And then they approached me later in a couple of years to go up there and coach the team as a non-playing coach. And in 3 years, we got one premiership and one runners-up. And the bottom line was that I was very grateful that I was fortunate that I made the team of the century of Dandenong.
There was something different about the VFA. The VFL was just pure class and skill. There'd be a very odd occasion, John Somerville being one of the odd occasions where there was an indiscretion on the footy ground, but it seemed to be no rules in the VFA. Some of those Sunday afternoon games, particularly Dandenong and Port Melbourne, were just outright brutal, it seemed. What was it like being in the midst of it?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty tough. You know, there was a lot of ex-VFL players that went to play VFA, and you always get the odd couple of guys that wanted to have a fight or hit you or do something. But that was all part of the game. You had to cop that and just get on with the game. But look, it was a pretty tough competition. We only had 16 aside. It was very, very entertaining. The feedback I got from people that watched it on television, on Channel 10 in those days, was enormous. And they just thought that it was great to see another game of football the following day after Saturday. It was pretty rough and tough, but you just copped it and went on and played your game. And I was fortunate the period of time there. I was lucky that I played in I was involved in a couple of premierships, and I really enjoyed my time there.
Household names: Eddie Mealy, Paddy Flaherty, Frosty Miller. That of that era, they were every bit as famous as the VFL players.
Yeah, well, look, they were sort of the backbone of the team. Eddie Mealy, I always called him the war horse. He played most of the game in the ruck. Frosty Miller, great player. I think he should have continued his VFL career, but I think he kicked over 700 or 800 goals in his career at Dandenong. Great player. Pat Flaherty, skillful player, nice little left footer, good stab pass. A bloke called Rodney Evans in the centre was a good player. Look, we had a good team, and of course Alan Morrow was coach when I was playing, and Alan and I keep in touch right to today, and he did a great job for the club, and as a matter of fact he coached them to their first division premiership.
And then you ended up at Carlton. That must have gone against the grain a little bit, I would have thought, as an Essendon man.
Yeah, no, look, just quickly, I'll just tell you the story. I was working with Adidas. I had a phone call on the Monday morning from Ian Collins about 9 o'clock, and he said, we're in trouble. I said, what's wrong? He said, we've just replaced John Nichols with Ian Thorogood. Would you be interested in coaching Carlton reserves? And he said, I'm sorry, I've got to ring you in the morning. I'm giving you 24 hours notice. If you decide to come, bring your kit bag and come to training on the Tuesday night. Well, I went home and discussed it with my wife, and I took it on. I helped them out, and we got to the finals the first year, and the second year there was no contract involved. It was just a handshake to help them out. But the first year in 76, gee, I tell you what, there were some good young kids come through. That was their first year, like Sheldon, Buckley, Marcoux, Francis, Harms. All those kids started that year in 76. So they finished up playing in their 1979 premiership.
I hope you're taking personal credit for the 79-81 flags. I'd be disappointed if you weren't.
No, not really. I think they were youngsters that had natural talent. And Carlton were very fortunate that they produced the goods on senior level. And look, they were all good players, and they had a lot of talent, and I could see that in their first year, the way they handled the ball and what they did with it.
And being a little younger than Rob, I'll keep saying that because it makes me feel good, you understand. My first recollection of your name was Ian Major saying, and we're going out to Princes Park now, Hughie Mitchell, what's going on? Got into radio?
Yeah, that was a good experience, Neil. It sort of kept me in touch with footy, which I really enjoyed, and working with Jack Dyer, gee, he was very, very dry. One day he's calling a game against Melbourne and Carlton, and he said the ball's kicked from the half-back line to Carlton's half-forward line, and he said, here comes the refrigerator, the generator, the Terminator, and Ian said, no, Jack, it's Wayne Johnson. They call him the Dominator. and Jack just went on his merry way as though it didn't happen. But he was a true professional, and just quickly, I'll tell you a story. He told me, he said he took a mark, the true story, at Punt Road. He took a mark on the boundary line. You couldn't see daylight between the posts. And he said when he kicked the ball, he said the ball got stuck between. It was like that, Jack. He was very good working for him, with him, and I started with Harry Beitzel in 3AW. I enjoyed that. Of course, I went up to the Gold Coast to live for a while, and I worked with two professional people in Tim Lane and Peter Booth for the ABC.
Yeah, they're pretty handy on the go, aren't they?
They're legends of the of that industry.
My favourite Jack Dyer was I'm a Fitzroy supporter and now a Brisbane Lions man, and we didn't get on the wireless very often, and when we did, you'd get sometimes didn't know who the players were, and the ball came out. It was thrown up in the middle. And Jack Dyer's commentary said, the ball's gone up, it's been tacked down, the little bloke's picked it up, he's kicked it down, that's a mark down in the forward line. That's the big fella. I had no idea whether we were about to get a goal or the other side did. And all these years later, Rob and I have called, probably 300 or 400 games of VFL and other football over the journey. Every time the ball goes down the forward line, I've got no idea who it is. That comes out.
Yeah, no, look, he was good. He was good to work with, Jack. I always remember his famous saying, Neil, was, never be where the ball ain't.
Yep.
Yes.
I thought that was a typical comment by Jack. It was great.
There's the guys on one of the stations in Melbourne regularly refer to his comment, I don't want to say anything in case I say something.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hughie, the job that you did in those days was very precise, concise. It was who's in front, who's kicked the goals, and a theme. There wasn't any of the other stuff that's talked about ad nauseum with the footy these days. Do you like, do you like watching the modern game, but more importantly, do you like how it's covered by the media?
Yeah, well, look, it's a different ball game today compared to our day, but the thing I get a little disturbed about, like a lot of people, is that they keep changing the rules. So they're forced to change the rules because I think the coaches today are responsible in this area because they're trying to win games. It's so important. They've got to win today, and one coach is trying to outfox the other one, which are forcing the rules to be changed. And I do blame the coaches to some extent by doing that. But look, the game today is all different. I don't like when I see half of the ground empty. I don't like when you see about 25 blokes in a bunch there trying to get the footy. And if you just take notice of a game, you'll be amazed to see how many times the umpire balls it up because there's too many players on the ball. No, look, I do watch it. Probably, I don't get that excited. If it's a close game, I do, but it's all different now. The way it's played, it's all about money and television, and it's a business. And I think it's taken a little bit out of our game.
Yeah, it's a bit sad. Most of our vintage think similarly. There's all these stories that aren't really stories. Just a quick one. We talked about the great names you played with. I chatted to Johnny Newnham, a Fitzroy man that played for Victoria a couple of times, or 7 times actually, and he talked about the aura that when you walk into a training room or match day and you're surrounded by the competition's greats. You got to do it on 4 occasions, and I guess back in those days the selectors took 2 members of each team, so your team was full of stars. I guess you're really privileged to get those 4 games. What was it like being around the absolute cream of the crop?
Oh, look, that's something every player would dream about, to be involved, to be picked in a Victorian team. And you look around and you see the blokes like John Nichols, Barras, Alan Aylett and Teddy Whitten and all those names. To be part of that, it was really special. I was very fortunate that I was given that opportunity. And, no, look, they're memories you never forget. And to be so grateful that you were selected amongst a great group of players, and to me that was really great. And
many remain friends today, I imagine.
Yeah, we keep in touch. I see Alistair Lord down here quite often, and Billy Goggin and Doug Wade and all these guys. We always see each other now and again. We hold a lot of respect for each other, and I think that's one of the best parts of our game is after you retire and you meet these guys, you get them to know them better, and you become good friends.
Well, you've just given us a list of the people who we've got to get on the show between now and Christmas. We'll be in touch. You've got to tell them what a good fun time you've had. Now, Hugh, before you go, we've just received a text from Ian Cover, our mate from the Could Have Been Champions, who said, I'm loving Hugh, was actually in the company of one of his teammates, Greg Brown, last night. Lovely man. So he said to say g'day, and also to tell you that there's a book that's just been written about 1965 and 1968 called Coley's Champs. So if you haven't heard of that, get onto it.
Yes. Well, that's just been released. We've had a couple of functions over the past few days about it, of the launching of it. And any Essendon supporters out there, by all means, grab hold of it, because there's some very, very good stories. And one thing I'm very pleased about, that the guy that played 1 or 3 or 8 or 10 games comes into the book, and it sort of brings them alive again, because sometimes blokes think about they're forgotten, but these guys are in the book, and there's some interesting stories, and anyone out there that likes reading football books, by all means, grab one.
And Gary Fenton being one of them, who I think played 12 with you back in that era. Thank you very much again, Gary, for listening, for connecting us with Hugh. Hugh, has been a delight. You are every bit the champ that people have told me that you were, off the ground as well as on. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you this morning.
Well, thanks, boys, and I really appreciate the time, and I hope you've learned something about our game of Aussie rules.
And I've just had a correction come through from Cove. It was the 1962 and 65 premierships, for those who...
68 was a runners-up from memory.
Yeah, so we've had that corrected. So thank you for that. Thanks, Hugh. It's been a thrill.
Righto, boys. Thanks a lot.